Welcome to Deciphering Growth, the show that explores mental health from every angle. We bring you conversations with personal opinions, stories, and practical tips. We aim to break down the stigma and help you live your best life. So please sit back and let's dive in. Before we begin, we want to remind our listeners that this podcast represents the opinions of Tiffany Graves, Eric Stone, and the show's guests. The content provided is for informational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. Please consult a healthcare professional for any medical questions. The views and opinions expressed are our own and do not represent those of our workplaces. Listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content does not establish a doctor-patient relationship.
All right, welcome back, guys. We have a special guest today that I'm going to let Eric introduce.
Yes. Oh, I'm so excited. So it's a small world. Actually, my sister, who's been a guest on our podcast, is the one who introduced me to this guest. So we are so honored to have Chris Perry here today. He is a very big, outspoken advocate for mental health for first responders and police officers. So, Chris, thank you so much for being here. We're so excited. I know we've been talking a lot about this the past few months, but would you mind kind of just giving just a little recap of your career in law enforcement and what some of your experiences have been?
Sure. First off, thanks for having me. It's an honor. I've really been looking forward to it. And so I am in my 31st year of law enforcement. I retired February of 24 from City Cincinnati Police Department, and now I'm currently with the Amberley Village Police Department. And my role is that of a senior citizen resource officer. I volunteer with the Alzheimer's Association. We built a couple programs. Proud of all of them. The one that really is something that I have a really strong attachment to is the partnership with the Alzheimer's Association turned into a training called Dementia Training for First Responders.
Oh, wow.
We partnered then, the Alzheimer's Association and myself, we partnered with Hospice of Southwest Ohio and Veronica Sterling, and we built a 90-minute training session, 3 segments of 30 minutes, and the groups rotate through. One phase is basically a overall view of what dementia Alzheimer's is, and that's done by Dana Ritchie from Alzheimer's Association. Then you have my part, which is first responder specific information for how to approach people with dementia, what to look for, signs, symptoms, how you speak to them, the way you approach them as far as their vision goes, with their decreased peripheral vision and depth perception. Those are things that very, very few people in my experience, they don't know it. They don't know that's a thing.
Oh. Okay, we have to have you. We're gonna for sure have to have you back, Chris. But I want to hear, I'm just we have questions prep, but I was like, I want to talk so much more about that subject. That's so amazing. So thank you for just
Yeah.
all the great work you do for the community. We are just really, really excited. So, Chris, we've talked a lot on the podcast, and we've talked with a few other professionals just about kind of breaking down barriers to talking about mental health and just how it impacts us. So we've talked about how it impacts us as counselors and some of the work we see, media members, and just a lot of the ways trauma can show up. And so I know this is kind of really a powerful story you've had with this. Can you kind of maybe talk about how you kind of got a little bit more involved with mental health or realizing how maybe it impacted you or those you were serving and working with?
Sure. So at this stage in my recovery / rebuilding, or what I call my active building phase, I saw a lot of it started in my childhood. I grew up in the 70s. Cincinnati Police Department lost 10 officers in 9 years. My dad was a Cincinnati officer, and growing up at that, is what I consider to. It pretty much laid the foundation for what would ultimately become PTSD, which was diagnosed in 2020. A lot of traumatic events throughout the 31 years. The cumulative stress was more damaging than anything, and just the way it sneaks up on you, you don't realize it's happening. And a survey was given in an in-service class by Cincinnati Police Department's wellness coordinator, Tiffany Galvez. I took the survey. It was an overall mental health survey. I was hesitant to take it. I'll tell you, the only reason I took it was divine intervention, because there's no way I would have done it ever.
Yeah.
I answered the questions honestly. Results came back at lunchtime via email, and it said that I need to contact the UC Stress Center immediately because I was at a high risk for suicide.
Wow.
I looked at that, and it was like there was an angel on one side of my shoulder and a devil on the other.
Yeah.
You got an issue. No, you don't. Yes, you do. You know you have an issue. Yeah, we can't do anything about it because there's a stigma. What's going to happen with work? What if somebody finds out? And then I remember one day, crystal clear, I was standing in front of the sink, shaving. I looked at myself in the mirror, and I didn't recognize myself. And I'm not saying that I was delusional. Nothing like that. I just looked at myself and I thought, you aren't anyone that you used to be. Like, what's going on with you? So there were those signs along the way, and then the survey, solidified everything that I had been thinking. Went into therapy at the UC Stress Center, and I made it out the other side in 6 visits. I put my head down and I pushed through it like I did anything with sports.
Yeah.
I would do anything physically to get where I needed to be, but mentally it was totally ignored. Because why? Because there's a stigma. You didn't want to be seen as quote unquote weak or soft or whatever. Physically, you could be hard as nails, but if you showed any kind of issue with mental health, then you were an outcast. So I saw my own personal struggles, and I saw, the way I see it is once you get out on the other side and you're in a healthy spot, you can see it on other people's faces when they're not healthy.
Ooh.
And
Yeah.
when I would do talks, I would look into the crowd and I would see, when you deal with the first responder crowd, you get the folded arms and the I don't want to be here, and this is ridiculous. And it's funny because when I first started doing the talks, I would be insulted. I would think, man, this is not cool at all. And I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to tell my story, and you're looking at me like this. But what it turns out to be is those are the people that end up calling me later and saying, how did you do it? And it's it's quite an experience. And the thing is once you realize why they're kind of displaying this posture, the way they're looking at you, you're like, it's not personal. I get it. So of course I'm going to help you. Even though back, when I first started, I thought it was insulting, but I understand. It's they're putting their armor on.
Yeah.
Okay? You don't need to do that with me. It's reaching those people that are in that spot is the most rewarding thing that there is, and just seeing a culture change that started from the ground level. And it's true. I mean, I literally have cold chills right now because it's so awesome to see it develop.
It's amazing, I think, Chris, just to hear you talk about this, because it's like you're trained in a totally different area, but you're coming to it the same way. Like the counselors were getting taught, okay, this is how you go, and not come in. So it's really amazing. I think it really speaks to this kind of being more, obviously you have your job, but like a calling, like a passion, a mission. I'm sure everyone listening can just like feel how genuine you are. And I was joking before we started recording, I didn't need an extra cup of coffee because I knew Chris would get me all hyped up talking about this. But it's amazing. And I love you talking about it's not personal. And we do put this armor on to kind of survive in different situations, but also just in the area. And Tiffany, it looks like maybe you had something, so I don't want to hog the mic just because I'm excited today.
That's okay. Yeah, I think it's just important to have like the recognition, like there is that armor, but beneath that armor is a person that does need that connection, that does need that support, and helping to normalize and destigmatize like mental health is still a part of your overall health picture, and we have to take care of our whole self in order to be effective.
Yeah, that link between mental health and physical health, I mean, that's everything. If you don't have one, you're not going to have the other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I saw that in my own experience. When I was full-blown PTSD mode, my joints hurt. My muscles were always tight. I couldn't sleep. I never felt good. And what do you know? When you get mentally well, you start feeling great. And I started working out again. I started running again. It's a completely different world once you're well mentally.
Yeah, your
Wow.
brain has a really good, I say really good, some people would probably disagree. But it does a good job of basically saying like, will you stop and fucking listen to me or I'm going to make your life miserable.
Yeah, and it's a very loud, clear voice that it speaks
Mhm.
to you with.
Yes.
And
It
you'll
tries
pay the
its best to
price.
make sure you hear.
Yeah. I learned that the hard way. I'm a very stubborn person, which has worked out good and bad. Stubbornness kept me alive in a couple situations, that not accepting failure, but then it'll also drive you into the ground and damn near kill you.
Yeah. Well, Chris, there's so many directions I want to go with what you're saying. It's so relevant to so much of the stuff. Like you could have convinced me you didn't listen to every episode. No, I'm just kidding. But it so lines up with what we've been talking about the last few months here. I know we were talking about this before we started recording, but what do you see as some of the most common mental health challenges that maybe first responders are dealing with today? What do you see as some of the biggest obstacles and challenges?
The number one thing is an unsupportive administration, whether it be police, fire, whatever administration it is. If there's not buy-in, you're not going to have a successful wellness program. You're not. It's just not going to happen, because the leadership has to come from the top. Now, the people on the ground level can push and work themselves to death, but if they're not being backed, and this isn't something that the administration believes in, it's not going to work. It's not going to work good for anybody. And then your people on the ground level are going to be exhausted and frustrated. And those people are under a tremendous amount of stress, because they're putting out all the fires wherever they can. And, they reach a certain point where they don't have any more to give. And when they're not being backed by administration, then it's pretty much over. And one of the things I tell young police officers and firefighters when they're looking at a department, I tell them, I say, look at their wellness program. Do they have a robust wellness program? Are they supported? And then talk to the people that work there and ask them, is your wellness program, is it strong? Do they take care of the people? You know what? If they don't, go look somewhere else, because you can find a job. It's easy to find a job being a policeman or a fireman. So go find someplace that's going to support you. That old way of thinking of that's the way we've always done it, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it, that is ridiculous, and it shows me that's not a place I'd want to work, and that's not the kind of thing that a true leader will say.
Well, and as much as you feel comfortable sharing, Chris, we as counselors believe in wellness and holistic wellness, of course, but what have you seen as maybe the impact of when you have that wellness program for people you're working with or serving with versus not maybe having one? What's the biggest difference you've seen?
So one of the things that I saw that I'll never forget, and I was so happy that there's been so much change. I had a young police officer that had seen a pretty traumatic scene, and this police officer came to me and said, "Hey, can you recommend a therapist for me? I saw X, and it's not sitting right with me. So I want to go talk to a therapist." And I sat there. I was kind of speechless for a second, and I had tears in my eyes. And the police officer said, "What's going on? Did I do something wrong? Is that not what I should do?" And I said, "You have no idea, because this shows that our work is paying off." I said, "Because people prior to your generation, especially my generation and the ones before, you were told to bury it, suck it up." And I remember specifically early in my career, very traumatic event. I was told, just go get a drink. It'll make you feel better. And so you go from that end of the spectrum to where we are now, and that's a victory. It's an incredible victory. Changing an entire culture. That's the biggest change I've seen, and that's people willing to address it and to not be ashamed of being upset by something that they saw or experienced.
And that kind of leads me to my next question of like, how does the culture within first responder professions maybe impact an openness around mental health? You're kind of answering it, but I wanted to kind of ask you more specifically, like, how do you think culture shapes the discussion?
So when you have people that are willing to come out and share their stories, that's probably the most effective way to make change, to where you'll see people that you never expected from the generation prior to mine that will then come out and say, "Yeah, I've been having these problems for years, and now I'm starting to look at this a little bit differently." And just last weekend, and I saw somebody that I hadn't seen for a long time. I worked with for 25 plus years, and this person says, "I'm sorry about some of the negative things I said about you when you started talking about all of this." And I said, "It's okay, man. It's not personal. It's something new for everybody." And this person says, "I was wrong," and it started really making me look within myself to see what I need to work on, and that these things from the past did bother me. So people are seeing, and the culture is changing. You're never going to change everybody, but when you have changed it enough that people are willing to deal with their stuff, that's the best we can do, and I see that happen. It's awesome.
Oh, that is great. Tiffany, anything you want to follow up with? I know I'm excited. I've got my list all ready to go today.
Okay, when you have your excited days, we let them roll. I guess something that like totally off the script of questions, and just generally curious about like, what was it like in your experience having to like essentially put your head in the sand and like push through and like deal with that like internal battle of like, I know I have a problem and I probably should address it, but like I also like don't want to be seen as weak and like be in that bullied bubble.
So the outlook that I had for far too long was, when I would see these things, the 3 hours of sleep tops. And there were some days when I remember going over 48 hours without any sleep. But an average night was 3 hours of sleep. Bad relationships, not being able to communicate with people, not really having any time or interest in helping anybody, just being emotionally dead was a sign to me. But then I kind of legitimized it with, this is just part of the job. It's part of the job. And why did I think it was part of the job? Because that's what I'd seen throughout my entire career. You don't deal with it. It's just part of the job. You signed up for this, is what people would always say. You signed up for it. You knew what it was. You know what? I signed up. I knew it was going to be a dangerous job. I knew it was going to be a stressful job. But I never signed up for something that was going to destroy me mentally and emotionally. And ultimately, it comes to the point where it was almost, destroying me physically. So, yeah, it's just part of the job. And that's not part of the job. I see that now. And I tell her, like, just because you're involved in this career doesn't mean that your body and your brain and your relationships have to suffer. That's not part of the job. But that's, what you tell yourself.
I guess it kind of leads, Chris. What do you think is the biggest obstacle to a first responder maybe accessing mental health support? I know you've alluded to a few things, but what do you see as maybe like the biggest barrier or some of the biggest barriers?
And it is generational, in my opinion, in my experience. With the younger people, I don't think they have much of a barrier. I know they're a little bit hesitant just because it's personal. But that barrier for my generation was completely different than this current generation. Stigma is still there. I remember when I first went to see our wellness coordinator when I was with the city, I would sneak in the police station, go up the back stairs. I didn't want anybody to see me, and I was thinking my primary concern was what's going to happen to me, career-wise. Because I'd seen what happened to people in years past. Their careers were finished. They never went to another preferred assignment. They were looked at as an outcast, and that's still present in a lot of places, unfortunately. I would just say that old school mentality is keeping people from getting help. But the more, like I said earlier, the more people that come out and start putting this out, it can't be denied. It's right there in front of everybody's face. We know the suicide rates for police officers and first responders. They're higher than they've ever been. So yes, we obviously have a very severe issue. But the more people that come out and speak about it, the less there is a hesitation to go get any kind of help.
Yeah, I really appreciate just your openness, Chris. Like it's so raw and honest, and I think really helpful. And I think just the way you tell your story, like I think it really gets to where someone could be, where you're sitting there angel on one shoulder, devil on the other. Like, do I tell what's actually happening? Do I delete the email or go? I mean, it's just a lot of different moments in your story of just kind of reaching out and going. It's so interesting. I mean, I guess maybe what would be your suggestion to departments of just maybe trying to break down the stigma of asking for help or kind of sharing, hey, I'm not okay, or I may need some help today.
I know money's tight everywhere, but when you get some speakers to come and speak at in-service classes, or actually have an actual event, there's a girl named Ashley Ferris. She's a former police officer. She worked in Colorado. I don't want to tell too many things about her story because if somebody gets to see the presentation, it would spoil it. But it's one of those presentations where it hits you. It hits you hard, and it makes you see things for what they really are, and you see how important mental health is, and the more people that you can get out there to be exposed to this, the better. But putting it right in front of their face, where they can see it and hear it from somebody that's actually lived the life, that makes change. Anybody can sit up there and read a slide deck. That's easy. But when you have somebody that's standing in front of you saying, look, this is what I experienced. This is what happened to me. This is where I was in my darkest days, and this is where I am now. Because that gives people hope. And whenever I do a presentation, I always say I start in the basement and I end up in the penthouse. Because I don't want somebody to drive home from there and think, oh, that's all over for me. I don't know where I can go from here.
Yeah.
You end up on a high note, and they're going to have hope, and they're going to understand this. PTSD can be beaten. It absolutely can be beaten. And there's a maintenance phase just like anything else. So if you feel yourself maybe sliding backwards a little bit, go for a tune-up visit with your therapist, right, and get you back where you need to be. But you can never go backwards. And then when you come out with this and you start sharing with people, you'll have a support network. And I have a huge support network of people all from all over the country that, I'll text and email them or call them and say, hey, it's a buddy check. I just want to see how you're doing. and we all do that for each other, and it's a beautiful thing.
Gosh, that's so eloquently put, Chris, just about like, we start in the basement, we end in the penthouse. That's really ethical of you. And I appreciate that because, yeah, it does bring up something to hear so much of this heaviness and to hear about some of that and maybe to relate to it or be triggered by it. So thanks for saying that. I've been in counselor trainings. I'll just say, I won't name which ones, and they don't do that. They kind of send you out feeling very worked up and emotional, and that's not
Right.
safe for some situations or um very helpful. So something that's interesting, Chris, because I think you're just such a great connector, like you make these connections, and I know just from what maybe you're sharing, you weren't always this connected. So maybe something we get asked a lot as therapists, Tiff and I have talked about this, is trying to build connection, reaching out to people. Do you have any suggestions or anything you noticed from your story about how you maybe started building some of those connections and having more people offer like those buddy checks?
Just the number one thing is just to be real.
Mm.
Yeah. When you're in the worst stages, so many of us wear a mask. I wore a mask forever. I would laugh, make jokes. I gave this appearance that everything was good, but I like to make people laugh and make them feel good because I knew that I couldn't. And I saw the story about Robin Williams, the comedian. It was very similar to that, and that one really resonated with me because I felt the exact same way. Like I knew I couldn't be happy, and I knew I couldn't find peace. But if I could make other people feel happy, then that was what I wanted to do. And being real, being vulnerable, it'll forge those relationships because we've all been in the same place, and none of us ever want to go back. And you'll do anything in the world to keep your group of people in a good place. And I'm telling you, it becomes something that's stronger than family. And it's absolutely incredible.
And I mean, I can't speak to being a police officer or first responder, but I think there is something to speaking to someone within that community that's gone through some of those shared experiences. Like, I just know for me, it feels very supportive if I can call a counselor friend like Tiffany and be like, this is happening. I don't know what to do. It just hits different than maybe if I call a family member or another friend who still cares about me, but may not really know what I'm going through in the same way.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, if I call a friend of mine that's not a first responder and I say, I went to this horrible scene, it's nothing they can imagine ever experiencing. It's not going to affect them the same way. So they may not really understand what you're talking about. And unless you've been in one of those situations, you don't know how graphic and the feelings that you get from what you've seen and dealt with. TV does a huge injustice to us as a profession because it's nowhere near what you see on TV is nowhere what it's like in person.
Very tame, I imagine.
It is. It's it makes me think about. You look at what the first responders are going through in Texas right now. Okay, I have been through some horrible things. I have seen some horrible things. That is on another level.
Mm-hmm.
I could offer support to those people, but I don't know exactly what they saw. But I get the general feeling, and I'd be more than happy to listen and help them in any way that I can. But I would never sit in front of them and say, I know what you saw. I know what you felt. I don't. I'm in the ballpark, but I can't tell you exactly, what you saw. But being there, being able to have empathy and understand that what they experienced, they're going to be dealing with for the rest of their lives. You have to understand that kind of impact that it has. It's nothing that's in any way, shape, or form can you minimize or say, get some sleep, it'll all be better tomorrow. Guess what? That stuff's never going away. It has to be processed and it has to be dealt with properly. And that kind of leads me to the other thing is people I've helped in the past will say, I just want this memory to go away. I wish it were that easy. I wish that was a thing. I can't let some of the worst things that ever happened to me go as far as forgetting about them like they never happened, but it's not something that haunts me every day. If I drive by a location where I was almost killed, I look at that place and I'm like, that's where this happened. It's nothing more than. And after PTSD therapy, I actually went to 2 locations to visit those locations, which I had avoided ever since they happened. And we're talking 20 some odd plus years. But I went back to both locations and I just stood there and kind of took it all in. I was like, this is just the location. This isn't anything. That doesn't haunt me. It's an unfortunate thing that happened, but it's just a place, and that's freedom. It's very liberating. But when you can go through that with somebody else that's been in one of those situations, and you visit a location with them, you support them while they're there, and a lot of times they'll say, yeah, I get what you're saying. I never thought that I would agree with you saying that it's just a thing that happened. I said, but yeah, I get it now. So, and then from that stage, you can move on to forgiveness, which is another huge challenge, but very, very worth the effort.
Oh, Chris, I'm just so amazed. Like, I feel like you're just answering the questions before I even asked them. I was going to talk about peer support and the value of it. And it's like, if that's not the best example and show of support for peer support, then I really don't know what there is. But also, we talk a lot about this, Chris, where we talk about there's so many other ways to heal. You can heal in therapy, but you can heal with peer support. You can heal with having the supportive people, having those buddy check. I love that. I just think it's such a great holistic, and I love how you talk, Chris, just because you're very detailed and you give a lot of practical ways. So if someone's listening right now, they could be like, oh, okay, so this is how you could get started. Or so really just appreciate your openness, just because that takes a lot of courage to be as open as you are about this is what's impacted me. And it's really helpful, because I will be honest, I think that's a hard thing for some of my clients sometimes, is finding someone that's like maybe not closely connected to them but has gone through something, and they can kind of learn from that or hear about their experience, just because it can get overwhelming, and sometimes not everybody is trying to help the person. They're kind of like not like kind of pouring too much out, and that person's just trying to learn how to get started managing it. So just thank you, Chris. I'm just loving this so much. Tiffany, anything you would add so far?
Yeah, I think it's what Chris had mentioned earlier, that being able to accept someone's experience for what it is and be able to recognize, we'll never truly know like person to person's what their like whole emotional experience is, but being able to be empathetic and sit there and be like, I can't, tell you when or how this will get better, but I'm here like every step of the way in terms of normalizing like this is going to suck.
Yeah, there could be you can't avoid that part of it. I had that discussion, I think it was Thursday, with somebody that's starting into this. And I said, I'll walk this with you. You're going to have to do the work. And you're going to dig up some demons. And it's going to suck. It's going to be hard. But you have to slay those demons before you can get past them and on the road to being who you deserve to be. You deserve the happiness. And one of the greatest things that was ever said to me during my recovery process was, this therapist looks at me and she says, "You do understand that it's okay for things to suck, right?" I look at her and I'm like, you know what? That's not in any way correct. It's not. It's not okay for things to suck. We have to fix everything. And then it hit me like a sledgehammer. And I was like, you know what? She's absolutely right. Some things just suck. They just do. And you have to push through it. And once you come to the realization that some things just suck, and they do, but we can get past those things. But yeah, it's going to suck for a while.
Yeah, I always remind my clients like life itself is traumatic and we're gonna have ups and downs and like sometimes it's harder than others. But it's okay that like we hit hard spots that suck. Like life would be weird if there was no sucky parts.
Right. You know, the other thing while I'm thinking about it is it bothers me when people will talk to me and they'll say, well, my experience was nothing like yours. It doesn't matter. Your trauma is your trauma. Mine is mine. No one is greater or less than the other. And that's, I think it's a big sticking point for people. Like, what was it really that? It wasn't really that traumatic. No, it was. It really was. And the way I say it is, it doesn't matter if you're like me and you were nearly beaten to death or hit by a car or any other things that happened to me. If it's that kind of stuff, or you saw a squirrel get hit by a car this morning while you're waiting for the bus, they're the same. Oh, and people argue, it's not the same. It is. It was traumatic to you. It's your story. It's not mine, and it caused you damage. So it's don't minimize it.
That's one of my classes is where people I can't help it. It gets on my nerves when I have clients come in and they're like, oh, well, I'm like, no, like, I don't care, like, what someone else's life is experiencing in this moment. Like, your life is your life, your journey is your journey. We're allowed to have hard things. Hard things look different for every single person. Like, a car accident for me might be like, oh, that's no big deal. But for you, it might be life altering. And that is okay.
Yeah.
I just love this. I picture like there's a table, and it's like I think sometimes people think there's only so many seats of, well, this is the amount of trauma that can be acknowledged, but it's like no, we can acknowledge everyone's trauma and the impact of that and how it really shows up. And sorry, Chris, I think you had something too.
No, it's just that's one of the things that really annoys me is the people minimizing trauma, or even in the first responder community, they'll say, I don't know why this person's having an issue. They haven't really been through that much. Like, were you there? No, you weren't. Did you see it, feel it, smell it? You didn't. So you don't have any room to talk about any of it because you weren't there. And then they want to second guess people, and I go right back to, were you there? Did you see what they saw? Did you feel what they felt? Did you hear it? Did you smell it? No, you didn't.
Wow.
So you
Chris,
know what?
I feel like it's just so profound. Sorry, please keep going. My goodness.
I am gonna turn off my camera really quick before my cats like decide to start chewing on my.
That's fair.
They're hungry.
You're good.
There's one of the things I got a hold of yesterday. It was in a text. I'm trying to think exactly what it was, but it was it was incredible. It was from a firefighter friend of mine, and he was just talking about how you have people in the first responder community will say something negative about somebody that's going through some stuff, and they see somebody during and I'm not talking when the scene is active, but when a scene is secured and you see somebody, and like I reference the stuff that's going on in Texas right now, but you see a first responder that's dirty, that you can see they've already been through hell, and they're leaning up against the fire truck, or they got their head leaned up against a tree, and they're spec, and they're taking a minute for themselves. Okay? That is not weakness. That's getting rid of some of this stuff, even if it's just temporarily, so you can charge yourself back up and go back into the fight and give 100%. And to sit there and be like, oh, that person's weak. You know what? That's the most incredible display of strength I've ever seen. You're getting yourself back to a state where you can then be productive in your mission that's not over. So yeah, that's not weak. That's getting yourself ready so you can come back into the fight and be as close to 100% as you can be.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, and also I'm just like, who's judging people that are in just total trauma zone of just trying to serve the. I mean, I'm almost like I would want to shame whoever's judging people. Like we all need a moment to gather, and that would be a healthy outlet. Oh gosh, Chris, there's just so many directions. We definitely have to get you back on because I just want to keep asking you questions. But I've got one more question if you have just a second. I wanted to maybe ask, you're speaking to this person the whole time, the first responder who's struggling, maybe not doing as well. And so my question to you is, what advice would you give to a first responder who is struggling but is still afraid to speak up? Like, do you have anything you would specifically say to them just to try to support them with being in that moment, that headspace?
So what I did is I started looking at myself from when I started to where I was at that particular time in my career, and I realized how much I have lost of myself, and I realized pretty quickly that I had paid a tremendous price, and the reason that I paid a tremendous price was because I was not prioritizing myself, and I realized at that point that I am more important than this job. I have worked hard. I've taken a lot of chances. I've risked my physical, mental health in my life. And you know what? I want to be happy. I had been happy so long. I deserved to be happy because I'd sacrificed so much. So prioritize yourself and look at the big picture and say, do I want to be who I always should have been or who I used to be? And realize you are priority number one. And you're priority number one because if you're not, people that depend on you, your spouse, your kids, your family, your coworkers, you're never going to be who they need. You won't have the capability to be that person because you don't have it anymore. You're exhausted, you're drained, you have nothing left to give. At that point, when you try to push on, you're just running yourself into the ground. And eventually we know where that all ends up. So step back, prioritize yourself, and realize, you know what, maybe the career isn't for you. Prioritize yourself. Look at it. Do a no BS assessment. Is this really where I want to be? And if it is, great. If it's not, that's also great. There are plenty of other things that you can do, but it's not worth sticking around if it's going to end up killing you, or destroying your marriage or destroying the relationship that you have with your kids. That stuff can't be undone. So prioritize yourself and realize you are priority number one, and do everything you can to get yourself well. And if it's a job change you need to do, make a job change.
I love it. I don't want to cheapen it at all. I think that's so profound, Chris. Just like take care of yourself, and it is a job. And if it's not worth your life, I think we're probably not going to get any more direct or profound. And I just want to thank you, Chris, for all of answering all these questions. Like somehow you answered my questions, like half of them without me even asking them. So you're just a pro's pro. But Tiffany, anything you have just as we're kind of shifting gears here?
I also just want to say thank you for being here and thank you for help fighting the stigma that surrounds so many first responders and so many people dealing with PTSD and CPTSD. And those barriers to actually like moving forward and getting help.
Well, you're welcome. I enjoyed this, and I love any opportunity that I get to help in any way that I can. So if you guys ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask.
And this is something just for our listeners too, Chris. If someone wanted to, because I want to follow up with you. Where could I go to find maybe more of your maybe podcast or stuff? Is there anywhere someone could go to kind of follow or keep up with you, some of the stuff you're doing?
So there's several podcasts out there. There's one with After the Tones Drop. Most of these are on Spotify. I can send you a link to several of those. I can't think of all of them offhand.
We'll grab those. And so if you're listening, we'll on our episode on our Facebook, we'll link to some of those stuff for Chris. So if you want to hear, because it's just such an amazing. I really have no doubt, Chris, anyone listening is going to be like just really inspired by this. And so I just want to make sure they know where to find you. So again, we just want to thank Chris Perry for being on today. So great to just probably a living breathing example of challenging stigma and using their own pain for a purpose and helping heal others. So Chris, we are totally going to have to get you back on to talk about some of those other things, but thank you so much. And Tiffany, I'll throw it to you if there's any last things you want to throw out.
Oh, I just want to say thank you guys for being here. You can catch Chris on our Patreon and all the wonderful resources there as well. And as always, just keep growing.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Deciphering Growth. We hope you found our conversation helpful and insightful. Subscribe to our podcast for more episodes and check out our Patreon for more content. Don't hesitate to contact us on social media if you have any questions or comments. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep growing.